The navigation failure happened at 3:40 on the 22nd day, which was the day before they should have arrived. Chief Navigator Myra Quilindra ran the diagnostic the first time because the readings were inconsistent with the plotted course, and inconsistent readings required verification. She ran it the second time because the first diagnostic confirmed the inconsistency, and she needed to know if the confirmation was itself an error. She ran it the third time because the second confirmation was the same as the first, and she was trying to find the error in the system rather than in the position. She ran it the fourth time because after the third confirmation she understood there was no error in the system, and she needed the fourth run to be sure before she went to the captain. The fourth run was the same as the first three. They were not where they were supposed to be. She went to Captain Davin Rail's quarters and woke him and told him. He was 53 years old and he had been captaining refugee transport vessels for 9 years, and he had the specific quality of someone who had spent 9 years being the person that 400 people looked to when things went wrong, which had produced in him a practiced, reliable capacity for not communicating his own fear until he had a plan to communicate alongside it. He listened to Myra's report. He asked 3 questions. He looked at the diagnostic himself. He said, "How long have we been off course?" She said, "The drift began approximately 8 days ago. We corrected for it twice. I have the log entries. The corrections were based on the chart data. The chart data does not cover this region." He said, "We have been navigating by charts that don't apply." She said, "Yes." He said, "Where are we?" She said, "I don't know yet. I need time with the stellar data to establish a position fix." She paused. "The stellar data is unfamiliar. The stars I can identify are," she paused. "The angles are wrong. We are significantly further from the plotted course than the 8-day drift would explain." He said, "What does that mean?" She said, "I think the drive had an anomaly earlier in the journey that we did not detect. I think we have been off course for longer than 8 days." He said, "How much longer?" She said, "I don't know yet." He said, "What does it mean for the 3-week timeline?" She said 3 weeks was yesterday's timeline. She paused. "I don't have a new timeline yet." He looked at her. 9 years of working together had produced in both of them the capacity to communicate the significant things quickly. What she was communicating was, "I need time and I do not have good news when I have it." He said, "How long do you need?" She said, 6 hours for the position fix, more for the course solution. He said, "When do we tell them?" She said, "Now." He said, "Myra." She said, "They left everything to get on this ship. Their homes, their communities, everything they couldn't carry. They have been on this vessel for 3 weeks trusting us to get them somewhere safe." She paused. "They deserve to know what's happening on their own journey." He said, "They'll be frightened." She said, "Yes." She paused. "They are frightened already. The only question is whether they are frightened with the truth or without it." He was quiet for a moment. He said, "All right." He made the announcement at 500, not the ship's standard announcement. He went to the main passenger compartment himself, where most of the 412 refugees were sleeping in the specific uncomfortable sleep of people who had been sleeping in the same small space for 3 weeks, and he woke them and he told them what Myra had told him. He told them everything. He did not soften it and he did not inflate it. He said, "Our navigation system has experienced a failure and we are not where we are supposed to be. We do not yet know exactly where we are or how long it will take to reach our destination. We are working on establishing our position now. We will tell you what we find as soon as we find it." He said, "I know this is frightening. I am not going to pretend it isn't." He said, "I am going to tell you everything we know as we know it. That is a promise." The compartment was very quiet for a moment. Then a woman in the third row said, "What can we do?" Her name was Sira Noor, and she was 41 years old, and she had been, before the circumstances that had put her on this vessel, the director of a community resource center in the settlement she had left. She had spent 12 years building networks, the specific, practical work of connecting people who needed things with people who had things, of identifying the resources available in a community and making sure they reached the people who needed them. She had brought that skill onto the vessel the way you brought the skills that were part of you, not as a tool she had decided to carry, but as the way her mind worked when she encountered a situation. The situation she encountered at 500 on day 22 was 412 people in a confined space facing an indefinite extension of an already difficult journey, frightened, displaced, far from anything they knew, and asking what they could do. She heard the captain say, "Right now, the most useful thing is to stay calm and let us work." She heard this and she understood it as, "There is no useful thing yet." She began identifying the useful things. By 900, she had spoken to 30 people. By 1400, she had a list. By the end of day 22, she had brought the list to the captain. The list contained skills, capacities, available resources among the passenger manifest. There were 3 medical professionals among the refugees, 2 doctors and a nurse. There were 2 engineers. There was a teacher, several trained counselors, a chef who had worked in institutional feeding, a carpenter, and a woman who had spent 20 years running a small community garden and who had, with the specific foresight of someone who had always known that self-sufficiency mattered, brought seeds. Sierra said to the captain, "We have what we need to take care of ourselves while you work on the navigation." She paused. "We would like to help." He looked at the list. He said, "You assembled this today?" She said, "Yes." He said, "The medical professionals. We have a ship's medic, but our medical bay is limited." She said, "Dr. Bren was running a clinic in the settlement. She knows how to work in limited conditions." He said, "The engineer. Our chief engineer could use additional support." She said, "Verqualindra spent 15 years on commercial vessels. He retired 2 years ago. He's current on drive systems." Davin looked at Sierra Noor for a moment with the specific quality of a captain who had been managing alone for 3 weeks, encountering the evidence that he had not, in fact, been alone. He said, "Tell me what you need from me." She said, "Space, permission, information." She paused, "And tell us the truth when you know it, whatever it is." He said, "I promised that already." She said, "I know." She said, "I wanted you to know we heard it." Myra's position fix took 8 hours instead of 6, and produced a result that she checked 4 times before she accepted it. They were further off course than the 8-day drift, explained by a factor that suggested the drive anomaly had occurred in the first week of the journey. They had been navigating toward the correct destination using charts that did not cover their actual position for approximately 15 days. The core solution, finding a route from their current position to their destination using the stellar data available, took 3 more days and the assistance of Verqualindra, who had retired from commercial shipping, but who had not retired from understanding drive systems, and who worked alongside the ship's chief engineer with the specific, concentrated effectiveness of someone who had something real to contribute and was being allowed to contribute it. Myra presented the solution to the captain on day 25. She said, "I have a course." She said it with the specific quality of someone delivering news that is better than it might have been and not as good as it should be. She said, "The course is navigable. The drive is functional. The timeline is." She paused. He said, "Tell me." She said, 3 months from today." She paused. "Minimum. The course runs through unmapped regions and I will need to make adjustments as we go. The 3 months is the optimistic estimate." He said, "And the honest estimate?" She said, 3 to 4 months, depending on what we find. He was quiet for a moment. He said, "We have supplies for." She said, 6 weeks. Standard. She paused. Dr. Bren has done an inventory with Sierra Noor. They have a rationing plan that extends the supplies to 4 months if the refugees' food stores are included. He said, "They've already done this." She said, "They've been working on it for 3 days." He looked at her, he said, "What else have they done?" She said, "The teacher has organized schooling for the children. There are 43 children on board. She has them in structured days." She paused. "The counselors have started daily group sessions for the adults voluntary, but attendance has been high." She paused. "The chef has reorganized the galley with Sierra's team. The rationing plan produces 3 meals a day that are," she paused, "that are better than what we were providing on the original schedule." She said, "The carpenter has been fixing things. Small things of fixtures, storage, the specific wear and tear of 400 people in a confined space. He asked me for a list of non-critical maintenance items 3 days ago. The list is almost done." Davin said, "They've been doing all of this." Myra said, "Yes." She paused. She said, "They are taking care of themselves and taking care of us." She paused. "Sierra's team brings meals to the bridge crew." She looked at Davin. She said, "When did you last sleep more than 4 hours?" He said, "I don't remember." She said, "You should sleep." She said, "They have it." He gave the announcement to the passenger compartment himself again. He told them 3 months. He told them the rationing plan that Dr. Bren and Sierra had developed. He told them the supplies were sufficient. He told them the course was navigable, and that Myra was the best navigator he had worked with in 9 years, and that he trusted her. Then he said, "I also want to tell you what I've seen in the 3 days since the failure." He said, "You have organized yourselves. You have taken care of each other, and you have taken care of my crew. You have done this without being asked." He said, "I have been doing this work for 9 years. I have transported people through difficult circumstances many times." He paused. "I have not seen this before." He said, "I want you to know that I have seen it." The compartment was quiet. Sierra Nor said from the third row, "We have been taking care of each other for a long time." She said it simply, without sentiment. She said, "This is just a different place to do it." Month 1 produced the wall. It began with a child, a girl named Myra, 7 years old, who had been assigned to the teacher's structured days, and who had, in the 3rd week of the extended journey, asked if she could draw on the wall of the corridor outside the passenger compartment. The specific corridor wall that was everyone's daily passage to and from the galley, the medical bay, the common spaces. The teacher, whose name was K.L. Bren, and who was 34 years old, and who had been a primary school teacher for 8 years, and who understood that creative expression in confined spaces was not a luxury, said yes. Myra drew a star. The next morning there were 3 more drawings, a planet, a simple map with a dotted line on it, another star. By the end of the week the wall was beginning to accumulate, not just drawings, notes, names, short sentences in multiple languages, a pressed flower that someone had kept from the settlement they had left, pinned carefully to the wall with a small note in the language of their community. By the end of month 1, the wall was full. Not chaotic, the accumulation had organized itself into something coherent, the human aesthetic instinct that could not help ordering things even when ordering things was not the assignment. Names in one section, drawings in another, the sentences and notes woven between them, and at the center, written by someone in steady dark ink in the 3rd week. "We are not lost, we are on the way." Nobody knew who had written it. Sierra had asked quietly and nobody claimed it. It had appeared on a Tuesday morning, and by Wednesday it had been surrounded by additions, names, small drawings, a response in another language, a date. The sentence became the wall's center and the wall accumulated around it. Davin walked past the wall every day. He stopped in front of it most days for a moment. In month 2 he added something. He did not tell anyone he had done it. He wrote in small letters near the bottom left corner in his own handwriting, Day 22. "I told them the truth. They made it into this." He was not sure anyone would read it. He was sure it belonged there. Month 2 produced the specific, irreversible quality of people who knew each other. Not all 412. The vessel was too large and the circumstances too varied for that kind of comprehensive knowing. But clusters, networks, the specific organic formation of communities within communities, the medical team that Dr. Bren had organized, the group that gathered in the common space every evening for the counselors' sessions, which had evolved from structured therapeutic groups into something more organic. Conversation, mostly. The specific conversation of people who had found that talking about where they were from and what they missed and what they were afraid of was more useful than not talking about it. Verquelindra, who had spent 15 years in commercial shipping and 2 years in retirement before the circumstances that had put him on this vessel, was in the engine room every day with the ship's chief engineer, a woman named Dara West who was 39 years old and who had initially been professionally polite to the retired civilian offering to help, and who was, by the end of month 1, professionally reliant on him. They were in the engine room when the drive fluctuation happened on day 63. A brief, sharp anomaly in the primary drive output that lasted 4 seconds, and that Dara caught on the monitoring system, and that Ver was already at the panel for when she turned to tell him. They fixed it in 3 hours. It was fixable. It required the specific combination of Dara's knowledge of this particular vessel's systems and Ver's knowledge of the drive type's common failure modes, and neither of them had both, and together they had enough. Dara said, when it was fixed, "I want you to know that without you this would have been a 6-hour problem with a less certain outcome." Ver said, "You would have figured it out." She said, "Eventually." She said it honestly, without false modesty. She said, "Eventually is a different thing from 3 hours when we are in unmapped space." He said, "Yes." She said, "When we get where we're going, when you're settled, I want to offer you a position. Not permanent if you don't want permanent." She paused. "I want you to know the offer is there." He looked at her. He said, "I retired because I was done." She said, "I know." He said, "I came back because there was a need." She said, "Yes." He said, "I don't know yet what I want when we get there." He paused. "I know I want to get there." He paused. "Ask me again when we arrive." She said, "I will." She did. Myra Quelindra had the specific loneliness of the navigator, the solitary, concentrated work of finding a course through unmapped stellar regions, using instruments calibrated for different conditions and charts that did not apply, and the specific creative problem-solving of someone who had to arrive at new solutions daily, because the environment kept presenting new variables. She did not talk about this. She did the work. The work required her to be in the navigation bay for long hours, and she was in the navigation bay for long hours, and the crew and passengers understood that the navigator was the person who was finding the way home, and they left her to it. On day 71, Sira Noor came to the navigation bay with a meal and a question. She said, "Do you need anything?" Myra said, "I have what I need." Sira put the meal down. She sat. She said, "I don't mean equipment," she said. "You have been in this room for most of 2 months." Myra said, "The course requires continuous attention." Sira said, "Yes." She said, "How are you?" Myra started to give the answer she gave when people asked how she was, the functional answer, the answer that communicated, operational, no assistance required. She stopped. She said, "I am tired and I am uncertain and I am." She stopped. She said, "I know where we are, I know the course, I know the estimate." She paused. "I don't know the unmapped regions we haven't entered yet. I don't know what variables I haven't accounted for." She paused. "Every day I am making decisions that I am confident in and that I am not certain of, and the difference between confident and certain is the thing that." She stopped. Sira said, "Keeps you up?" Myra said, "Yes." Sira said, "Is the difference between confident and certain something that more sleep would change?" Myra considered this honestly. She said, "No." Sira said, "Then sleep is not going to resolve it." She paused. "What would?" Myra said, "Arriving." Sira said, "Then that is what we are working toward." She paused. "In the meantime." She said, "In the meantime, there are 412 people on this vessel who go to sleep every night in an uncertain situation and trust you to find the course in the morning." She said, "I want you to know that the trust is real. It is not performed and it is not managed." She said, "I have been watching this vessel's community for 2 months, and the specific quality of the trust that people have in the navigation bay is," she searched for the word. She said, "settled. It is not fearless. People are still afraid, but the fear is not about you. The fear is about the unmapped regions. They believe you are finding the best course through them." Myra looked at her. She said, "How do you know that?" Sierra said, "Because I talk to people." She said it simply. She said, "It's what I do." She paused. "It's why I came." She stayed for an hour. They talked about the course, about the stellar navigation, about the specific variables Myra was managing, and then about other things, the gradual expansion of a conversation between two people who had not talked before and who found, talking, that they had things to say to each other. When Sierra left, Myra sat for a moment before returning to the instruments. She thought 412 people trusting her. She thought she had been alone with that for 2 months and had not known, until it was said out loud, that the alone was the hardest part of it. She went back to the instruments. She flew better for a week. Day 91 brought the stars. Myra came to the captain at 700, with the specific quality of someone who has been working towards something for a long time and has arrived. She said, "I know where we are." He said, "Tell me." She said, "We are at the edge of the mapped region." She pulled up the chart. She pointed. She said, "This is our position. These are the mapped stars." She paused. "We are here." She pointed to a position that was, on the chart, at the boundary between the unmapped and the mapped, at the specific line where the familiar stellar record began, and the region they had been navigating without charts ended. He looked at the chart for a long time. He said, "How long?" She said, 11 days, if the drive holds and the course is clear." She paused. 11 days is the optimistic estimate." He said, "And the honest estimate?" She said, 11 days. She paused. "I am confident and I am certain. This is the first time I have been both." He looked at her. He said, "Myra." She said, "I know." He made the announcement himself. He went to the passenger compartment at 800 and he told them. He said, 11 days. The compartment was quiet for a moment, and then it was not quiet, and the not quiet was the specific sound of people who had been holding something carefully for 2 months, and who could, now, put it down. Sierra Noor was in the third row. She was crying in the specific way of someone who had been very competent for a very long time and who was, now that competence was no longer required to be the primary thing, allowing something else. The woman next to her put her hand over Sierra's. The woman's name was Dara West, the chief engineer, who had come to the announcement and who was sitting in the passenger compartment because she had, across 2 months, become part of it. She was not crew in the passenger compartment. She was a person in a community in a room where good news had just arrived. She put her hand over Sierra's and Sierra let her, and the room was full of people being relieved together. And the relief was the specific quality of relief that could only exist because the fear had been real and had been shared and had been held together for 2 months by 412 people, and a crew of 9 who had found each other in the unmapped dark. On the last evening before arrival, someone organized a gathering. Nobody was sure who had organized it. It had the specific quality of things that organized themselves when the conditions were right. When 421 people had been in the same confined space for 3 months and had become, through the accumulation of shared meals and honest conversations and the wall in the corridor, and the daily work of taking care of each other in a hard place, something that had not existed when they boarded. They gathered in the main compartment. They ate together, the chef's final meal from the extended rationing plan, which was better than it had any right to be under the circumstances, and which everyone knew was better because of the care that had been put into it. They talked. They told each other things about where they were from, about what they were going toward, about the specific ordinary moments of the 3 months that they were going to remember. Someone mentioned the wall. Someone else went and got the child who had drawn the first star, Myra, 7 years old, who received the community's acknowledgement with the specific quality of a 7-year-old who is being told she started something good, and who does not fully understand this yet, but who understands that it is being said with warmth. Cale Bren, the teacher, said, "I want to do something," he said. "I want everyone who wants to say one thing they are taking from this journey, not what they lost and not what they are going toward, what they are taking." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Verquelindra said, "I know I am not done yet." He said it simply as a fact he had not known before the journey. He said, "I thought I was done. I was wrong." Dara West said, "I know that I don't have to do it alone," she said. "I knew that before in theory," she said. "I know it now." Dr. Bren said, "I remember why I became a doctor." Sierra Noor said, "I have been building communities for 15 years and I have never built one this fast." She paused. "I think it's because we didn't have time to be careful about it." She said, "I think I have been too careful." Myra Quelindra said, from the navigation bay doorway where she was standing because she had come to listen, "I know that 11 days is navigable," she said. "I did not know that before this journey." She said, "I know it now." The captain said, "I have been doing this work for 9 years. He said, "I have transported people through difficult circumstances, and I have tried to do it well." He paused. "This is the first time the people I was transporting took care of me back." He said, "I did not know that was possible." He said, "I will not forget that it is." The gathering went late. People talked and then were quiet and then talked again. The child fell asleep against a woman who was not her mother and who had become, across 3 months, a person the child went to sleep against without deciding to. At some point, Davin Rail went to the wall in the corridor and looked at it. The wall would not survive the journey's end. The vessel would be cleaned and serviced, and the next passengers would not inherit this community's record. He had thought about this and had arranged for the wall to be photographed in full resolution before arrival, the complete record preserved. But looking at it now, in the corridor's amber light, at the end of the journey's last evening, he thought, the photograph is not the wall. The wall is the wall. The wall is what 421 people did when they were frightened and confined and uncertain, and had 3 months to decide what to be. He read the sentence at the center, "We are not lost, we are on the way." He thought, yes. He thought we arrived. He thought not just at the destination. He went back to the gathering. The vessel kept moving through the last 11 days of mapped space toward the place where the refugees were going, carrying the community they had become, which was not the community they had planned to be and which was, as these things often were, better than the planned version for being unplanned, formed by necessity and honesty, and the specific, irreplaceable accumulation of 3 months of taking care of each other in the dark. The wall in the corridor held its notes and its drawings, and its sentence and its record. The stars outside were familiar now. They were on the way. They arrived.